Hi, good evening. What we have in the chopping block tonight is I have a zone valve in my hydronic heating system that's going bad. So the zone valve is an Erie AG13A02A, probably installed in the early 2000s. Looks like Erie may have been bought out by Schneider Electric. This is a replacement part that I ordered from the internet, supplyhouse.com, I believe I got it at. The end switch on the valve is bad. I've known about this for a couple of years. I've been able to fix it. I'll show you when I pull the valve apart how I kind of limped it along for a little while longer. But the real point of this video is that I couldn't find a good video online that showed how to actually take the replacement or the electronics portion of this off the main body of the valve. Main body of the valve actually attaches into the copper via sweat joint or a threaded joint, and this gets screwed on to that valve. But also there's one more thing that I didn't know about and couldn't find a good example on the internet of what it took to also remove this after taking those two screws out. So this right here, this lever on the top of this valve. So here's where the override, manual override is for opening and closing the valve. Next to it, there's this little plastic part. It moves, it's spring loaded, it's plastic. If you look into this right here, you'll see that when I move that over, that releases a tab inside here. So after I take out these two screws, I'll need to rotate this over to the left as it sits in the valve to actually pull this head off the valve. So I'm essentially creating the video because I couldn't find an example of what else was holding this on, and there's it there. Move that over and you see that tab moving out of the way right there. So anyway, I'll walk through the steps of replacing this valve head in a little bit. Okay, here's the boiler room. We have an older slant fin, propane, fired. There's probably more efficient units out there obviously now. But it's a 3-zone unit. The first on the left there is radiant heat for the slab I'm walking on right now. The second zone is second floor hydronic baseboard heat. And the third zone I already pulled the cover off of is the hot water heater. So the hot water heater is this tank over here. Hot water gets fed in a coil that goes on that side, inside that tank, and the hot water flows around that and heats it up. So we'll walk through replacing that hot water portion of the valve right there. First thing we want to do before working on any of this stuff is to find the red outlet, which is the shut-off power for the boiler. We're going to flip that off. This way, more rewiring, we don't short out anything or get shocked. Okay, here's the valve with the cover pulled off. You'll see a Phillips head screw right here and right here. The one up top here is just the ground screw. Don't worry about that right now. So we're going to unscrew this, and the one over here on the right. First screw out. Second screw coming out. You notice it's starting to get loose as far as the whole head, but it's still pretty tight in there. So that lever up top I showed before, flip that over to the side, and this should pop off. There we go. So that lever was holding it on right there. Okay. Actually, as I don't feel like editing the video, and I'll stand corrected, I made a mistake. These two screws don't have to come out. They stay screwed in the whole time. The only thing that's holding this head onto this valve is this release lever right here. So apologize. Don't take these two screws out. Okay, so I'm going to do the rewiring right now. I'm just going to swap out wires. I'm probably not going to show it on video, but it's obviously two reds and two blacks coming off. Just doesn't matter which red which goes to black, or which red goes which red, which black goes which black. They're the same. It's a switch in there essentially. I'm not going to show the rewiring, but I will show putting it back on the new one. So of course when I turn the power off, the valve should have already gone over to the closed position, which is over here, which is where you want to be. When I put the new one on, I wanted that valve actuator location to be in that off position. So the valve is already in the off position there. At this time, you want to make sure also the valve moves freely with your hand. So make sure that is free moving. Otherwise, you may have a stuck valve. So it's good that it moves very freely by hand, and it's in the kind of an 11 o'clock position there. Okay, I finished rewiring this exactly how the old one was wired. Maybe it's not the cleanest wiring setup, but I did it exactly how it was routed before. So, like I said before, these screws we're going to keep in. Apologize for taking those out before, that was a mistake. We're essentially going to line up the two features in the back, make sure that's in there correctly. It's odd that okay, so when you put it on, you have to rotate it over some, and that will lock in. So the valve is kind of, this manual lever goes about halfway, and that's still in the closed position. But I pulled the lever over, pushed it on something there securely. Before we put the cover back on, we're going to turn the boiler back on. And what we'll do is we'll turn up the temperature on the hot water heater and see if this valve opens and then fires the boiler. Okay, it should be calling for heat. This is rotating over, and now you can see this lever goes all the way over to the side. The valve is open. The end switch has triggered the aquastat to turn the boiler, and we're going to have the boiler fire up here in just a second. So we'll let it run through a few seconds, and then we'll... Circulator is going right now. I can hear the water flowing through the pipes into the tank. And the boiler should fire up in a few more seconds after it goes through its wake up safety checks to make sure the dampers are open, and the fan will fire up and then it'll ignite. Okay, the boiler has fired, the valve is working. Now we'll turn off the call for heat and see if everything shuts down. Okay, turned off the call for heat. The valve is now turned off. Shut off the gas of the boiler. Right now it's still running a fan to suck out any exhaust. Looks like we're good. I'll replace the cover. Also a good idea to write on the outside cover what it's for. This is for the radiant, second floor, and I'll write HW on the new cover and put that on there and button it up. Okay, cover's back installed. This job is done. Next I'll show you with the end switch on the old unit, which was bad, and kind of walk you through that. Okay, so here's the old valve head that I just pulled out. Again, do not remove these two screws. My bad for telling you at the beginning. Don't remove those two screws to install this. So we'll flip the lever and jostle it and pull it out, and it'll be fine. The switch, the end switch, you can see down, let me get a light in there. That brown part right there with the two leads coming off this side. See those two leads there? That's the switch that actually fires the boiler and tells the circulator to go. So the call for heat will cause this actuator to turn, open the valve. When the valve opens up, I'll show you in a little bit, it turns a knob, which then presses on this switch, which then electrically tells the boiler to fire and circulator to turn on. So I'll show you that in a second, why this went bad. So those two screws I told you not to take apart before, we're going to take these apart now, just to show you what the inside of this valve head looks like. Okay, so essentially, you see there's a gear here which rides inside this mating surface here, which rotates this way and opens the valve. So that's the part that attaches to the valve. That opens the valve. Also, when it swings down here, there's a leg in there. Let's see if I can pull this off and show you. I think this pops right out. Yeah, here it goes. Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. This leg right here, when it rotates around, comes in contact with this finger right here, the switch. The only thing that was bad on this control valve head was this switch right here. I was gonna just buy the switch and rewire it, but I decided to go against that. Just buy the whole new head, as it's a boiler product. I'll probably end up replacing this end switch and then having this as a spare in case that other one goes bad. But what I did, there's play in these two plastic black tabs there that hold this end switch on. So if you see this little piece of toothpick there in the bottom, I jammed that between the flat black plastic tab down there and the end switch, which raised the end switch up a little bit and then allowed this throwing of the switch to actually come in contact. So again, this switch is bad in here, but by moving it up and taking out the play of the holes here, it allowed it to function for another year or so. I also put a little piece of wood there just to kind of shim it up a little bit and get the most throw into that switch as possible. With that being said, I'll put this back together, rewind this pretty tight spring, put that arm back on there, and have it as a spare. Anyway, apologize in the beginning. Do not take these two screws out unless you are actually going to mess around in here. Otherwise, the head comes off with just this lever right here, and wiggling it will come off. So that's all. And if this video was any help to you at all, wouldn't mind subscribing and a like there. Any questions, please ask in the comment field below. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. All right. Happy New Year.